Well, hello folks, LA here with your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets and we do it from a neoclassical perspective. Each time we ask ourselves, what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones? I do this show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern time here from the base of the beautiful, wet Rocky Mountains. Middle of July, folks, and I swear, I think we're having a tough time getting to 70 degrees here. It's a beautiful setting, but very odd. As far as a beautiful setting, how can you not like what this market keeps doing? Although one thing I don't like is that my quote system here from profit charts can't seem to get the Russell right most of the time. Russell was down today. That's a misquote. So let's see where the Russell actually traded. Well, we'll get to it in a second. But we had the Russell down on the day. We had everything else basically flat on the day. So we ended up about where we started, if I'm to believe this. I think that's true. We did see a new high on the Dow. I know that's true. Elsewhere, I'm looking now. Gold looks about right. Oil looks about right. Oil was up a good percentage here, 1.7%. We had the dollar strong again today. The euro sells off. Euro starts to break down finally, and the bonds actually I thought were up today. I don't know if I can believe these quotes tonight, so I'm going to take those away and we'll just look at them and eyeball them ourselves because I'm not sure. I'm going to start with the Dow. I still got some problems getting the quotes up on the Dow in my TA Today charts, so I'm going to start here with the profit charts. Dow Jones Industrials, 111 million today. They go to a new high. They're over the highs. Volume expanding a little bit more. Folks, that's a new high. It can go higher. Now, one thing it did do today is it hit the targets. Matter of fact, it hit it yesterday. 17.55. Yeah, I hit it yesterday and I didn't note it because it got this 17,000. Where's the high? 120. Yeah, we hit the ABCD target that was still out there was 17.097. So yesterday we hit it. Today we hit it again. Go over it. Have higher volume. That thing can climb. It can climb more. Let's go to the TA Today charts and look at the rest of these. Now here's the S&P 500. And one thing I've talked about before, and I'll just point it out again, these support zones are way away from the highs. And I suspect as soon as they do fall off, which is about another week, then we're going to get some up here closer, but there's really a long way between these. Leaving that aside, what do we got going on? We got another one of these V-shaped. You know, I can never get enough of these, right? V-shaped reversal type things going on. Straight up again. It's struggling, but it is going up, and it's going back towards those highs. Today, even though it got over back under, it had higher volume. So that tells me, just like the Dow, this thing's going to try to push again tomorrow. So S&P is going to try to push. If we look at the NASDAQ and the Russell, it's a totally different story. NASDAQ fails again at the breakdown bar, 44, 43.56, gets over it, back under it, does have decent volume, but still not as much. It's still a failure. That's the third failure in a row. NDX. Now the NDX has been pushing this thing, and the NDX climbs all the way up to a new high again today, gets back underneath it, so over, back under, but higher volume. Says it can test again. So yes, extended, yes, worn out, yes, wants to turn, but no, not quite yet. And then there's the Russell with huge divergence. If you look at the S&Ps, they're almost at the highs. The Russell's more than 4% off the highs. That's the kind of divergence that took place over the last 2 weeks. Russell has transitioned now to a bearish trend as of last night, right? Hitting the lows with continued volume, right? And now into the support zone just slightly. It's going to force it to redraw again. and that probably will end up redrawing. Yeah, it's going to have to go back to these highs. So the Russell's coming back, and I believe had already 1157. Yeah, had already done a retest regen off of this high. So this is the second time back for that. Now, what it will be though is a first time back here, and that's almost an automatic buy. You know, first time back for a retest regen. And matter of fact, the way it's coming back is probably going to hit it with more volume, but it's still probably going to be a buy, just as a result of the fact that like 80% of the time those things are buys. But this is a whole different ball game over here. You got an ABCD structure on the way down now, right? From here down, because it's just underneath it. So that would take you back down into about 11, 12 range. So if this thing does start to sell off, I think the only way it doesn't end up a buy right here off of this zone is if the rest of the market starts caving, and right now it doesn't look like the rest of the market's going to cave. So that more or less says, okay, for whatever reason, and the reason being that this is probably going to hold, then we're going to see some congestion here while the rest of the market finishes up whatever it wants to do, and then you potentially get the move down. Now, when I say it's an 80%er, you know, on the first retest regen, that has to do with how many bars it's going to cross already, which is way more than 6. That's the biggest thing. But when I say that, that doesn't mean that you buy it and it automatically, you know, goes shooting back the other way. It simply means that you will get some sort of a lift off of it, and then it could come right back into it. So you may not get much of a lift, but more than likely you'll get some sort of a lift when it hits there. That's the Russell. So we got the Russell struggling, the NASDAQ struggling, the NDX wearing out, the Dow looks like it's just getting started, and then the S&Ps also struggling to get over those highs, but definitely wanting to test them again. That's the indexes. Let me go over to the sectors. And you're gonna have to bear with me because I was rushing to get through these before the show. I was out all day long, so I didn't really get to watch the market. So a lot of these, I'm looking at them for the first time along with you. I did get through these and glanced at them. The transports did break out. Now the transports, along with the Dow, breaking higher, pushing higher. For a long time there, I've been saying this is a range, right? This is a range trade. Well, it had been, but now you're 2 bars over it. So I don't know that I can say that anymore. So transports moving higher. The stocks. You know, Intel had a big day today. I talked about watching Intel last night to give you some idea. You know, watch it today to give you some idea if it's going to hold. I think I cited something like 3240 as the number. Intel way over that number. Intel 34. Oh, what was the close here? 3465, up like 8% today. So Intel is like the new darling. Everybody wants it, right? And so, remember I talked about, I actually wrote an article about this. If you want to check it out, you can. It's on the front page here, somewhere back here. And it was talking about, here it is, did you miss the good news on Intel? Intel had been underneath $40, excuse me, $30, had been testing this $30 area for something like 10 years, 14 years, way back in the 90s, and has been unable to break over it. Now it has. It's broke over on a monthly, a weekly, a daily, all of them are breakouts. Today does look like some sort of a blow off. You'll probably get a test of that high tomorrow. If it seeks back, you know, leaks back up underneath it, I would think you finally get some sort of a range trade, and that range trade initially is going to be wherever the high is tomorrow. If it comes back up underneath it with less volume, that would be probably your high, and then you get some sort of a range in here for a while, right? But Intel is definitely a buy on some sort of a pullback, especially on a nice fill of this gap would be a great place. But anything above 30, this thing's probably got 45 written on it eventually. That's Intel. Let's go back to the SOX now. So given Intel, the SOX goes and tests the highs, and not only does it test it, gets over it. Slightly less volume, so it's going to be a bearish breakout. But now you've got an ABCD structure in place, right? Anytime you get a breakout after some sort of congestion, you get an ABCD structure that measures 90.13, right, to take it up to there. And you actually had a weekly. Remember, the weekly was still hanging out there at 90, 89.99. So now you have two measures saying we're going to go about another $1.50 higher that are hanging out there. So the chips look like they're going to continue to push, irrespective of what everything else does, about $1.40 to $1.50 higher. So chips bullish. So far, transports, chips look good. XLB is just a range. It's a typed range up here at the high, so really nothing there. XLE, this one was doing a retest regen off the prior swing point low. It had done an immediate retest, and now it actually gets over it. That throws it back into a range, and so this becomes neutral instead of negative. That's the XLE. XLF, financials. You would have thought they were going to take out the highs today. They started higher. They looked like they were going to try to do something. They went up on to the top of the price, back underneath it where the high is. Couldn't get over it. This thing is looks like it's going to try to retrace. So financials don't look like they're going to help out near term. XLI struggling, but XLI also got over the retest regen. So that throws it into a range, and the range is back up to here. So now we've got two previously bearish sectors now showing range trades instead of bearishness. XLK, remember, hit the ABCD structure yesterday. Today does a doji spike at the highs. We'll see if it can carry any more, but that one, that's way extended. So I don't know how else to say it. Too extended. So I wouldn't expect too much more out of it. And remember, you got Google tomorrow night. And you got Apple and Microsoft coming up, I think, next week. I know Apple is. I'm pretty sure Microsoft is as well. And then you go to the three sectors that are usually the sectors that are late cycle. In other words, they're the ones that do well at the end. Because as you get closer to a quote-unquote recession, you usually want safer things. XLP is one of them, struggling. XLU is another, struggling. XLV is another, struggling. So your late cycle sectors are having a hard time here. And then the last one, XLY, a lot of volume came in here, ugly candle again. This looks like it's struggling as well to me. So when I look at the sectors as a whole, for the most part, they look like they're going to be choppy struggle. You've got ranges on something that used to be bearish. You've got a couple of good strong ones, three strong ones still. One of them extremely extended though, and then you have the 3 or 4 sectors that are struggling. World markets. Let's pop over and look at these. So we had, well, let's start in Asia, because Asia is actually probably the more interesting one. Maybe I shouldn't say interesting, but Asia is the one that's been trying to hold up the most. But what was interesting last night was that Taipei actually came off the highs with a little volume expansion. That is starting to set up some sort of a range trade. Now, it got back into this big bar. Remember, it's been trying to get over this. So we had the idea, let me draw this in, we had the idea that this may set up some sort of a range when it took place. Well, they just kept hitting it, right? They wouldn't give it up. Well, last night you finally get a fairly decent sized pullback. That does look like it's going to go test the bottom of that range. So Taipei, which happens to be chip country overseas, does look like it's going to give some sort of a range pullback now. The Nikkei. Bank of Japan, you know, of course, has been forcing the yen down. This thing is up at the highs again, doesn't have the volume. Looks to me like it's going to fail at the highs. HSCE, which is the China shares traded in the Hang Seng, the H shares, comes off with a little bit of volume last night. Doesn't hold price though, 104.93. Does not hold price, so it's back into these bars. That's probably going to try to retrace. And then if we look at Hang Seng itself, Hang Seng, remember, was over those highs last night. You know, the two bars it had to get over, which, if you want to look at it on your own, June 23rd bar, the July 9th bar. That one gets back up. It's going to try to test into this high, 23,576. Looks like it's going to still try to test it, and it's probably going to fail. So the Hang Seng is almost done. So when I look at Asia now, Asia is going to try to retrace, or it's on the verge of trying to retrace. Either, you know, it might not be tonight, but it definitely could start tonight, and it's coming. It's coming quickly. Then if we look over in Europe, so Europe had fell out of favor, but now, lo and behold, and before we go to Europe, let's go to the euro. The euro, as it gets cheaper, the stocks are going to get more valuable, right? Because there's cheaper currency buying them. That's Draghi's whole plan. That's what currency wars are all about. And actually, it's not even currency wars. It's coordinated devaluation around the world. That is what's going on. There's like three big factors happening. The world of central bankers are doing competitive currency devaluations, but they're doing it in concert, allowing one to do it, bring their markets up, right, the one that needs to, and then they go and let the next one do it. And they've been doing this for the last 4 years, 3 years now. Coordinated currency intervention, basically through either QE programs or talking about QE programs or these targeted LTROs or whatever they are. Euro hits the bottom today, low down there 133.44. 133.43 is the close. That's a break. You got a trend change last night. Let me point it out here on this bar. So a confirmed bearish trend. You get under the low of the big bar, which was the real test, and you gap over it. You're under the lows now, right? There's a little low right there. Now you're under the lows, and let's pull it up on the weekly. If you look at the weekly, it's going after, or I should say it's going into, oh, I'm on the Russell. Let me get the FXE, hang on. FXE, here we go. It's going after this low. Now this low never printed 6 bars, but it's going after it. And the reason that's important is that's going to set up an ABCD structure to the downside, and we're on the weekly, it's going to be large. It's going to take it way down, right? And that swing point low that's over here is about to get broken. And if it breaks this week, you're going to have it on multiple time frames. You're going to have it on the weekly, you're going to have it on the daily. That's going to put pressure on the euro to the downside, right? There's another one here that probably will give it support. And then it's eventually going to try to get back into this big bar. That is that support zone. And then you get into it, right? And then probably some sort of a bounce and then try again, because they're going to keep driving this thing lower to drive the euro markets higher, to drive inflation higher in euro. That's the idea. That's what they're trying to do. And you can see it just unfolding here. So the euro wanting to go lower, which now go back to the stocks. Although the FTSE is not part of the euro, the FTSE is hanging up there. Here's the weekly. Let me pull up the dailies. Here's the daily. So nice big rally spike back up. You're about halfway up. You're coming back now into the swing point lows of the prior retest regens. And just like last time, it just blows right through them. Right? They're not respecting them at all. And so that tells you that there's more strength here than you think. right? And that's what this thing's doing. So now it's coming into the next one, and then it's got another one above it, but it is going to keep attacking these, right? And then, you know, it's going to come down and go back up, but it's going to build out some big range, and then eventually, I suspect, because of the currency devaluation, it's eventually going to come up here and try to take out all the highs over time. That's the FTSE. The DAX, which is actually probably the strongest, DAX is back up doing a retest regen. This is kind of the critical area for it. We'll see if it wants to get over it or not. If it doesn't, it's going to regenerate lower, right? Do an ABCD structure potential to the downside. But given what's happening with the euro, I suspect it's not going to be able to do it, and it's probably going to build out some sort of a range for a while, and then eventually, same sort of idea, it'll try to go after the highs, and then the weakest one is the CAX, and the CAX itself, weak bounce, right? This one's going to have a hard time, and this is the one that's going to keep dragging the other ones back. This one's going to have a hard time getting back over. It's going to be after 6 bars before it gets into the swing point low, which means it's probably going to fail right there. And that's what's going to bring them back down and make them all gyrate down again. But at the same time, if Draghi gets his way and is able to jawbone the euro down into new lows, that's going to help these markets stay afloat, even though the fundamentals look like crap, at least for now. That's the world markets, and let me go over to the OX markets now. And if anyone has questions, let me remind you, you can type them in. If you don't have a login on Livestream, it's easy to create one. You just go over to livestream.com. Probably ought to just put that in here. If you're logged in, you can log in. It's www.livestream.com. If you go there, you can create a quick login for yourself, and if something, you know, pops into your mind while you're logged in, well, you can ask it. You can text me 303-912-9110 or email me support@tatoday.com. You can certainly text or email me during the day, and I'll pick them up at night. Let's go over now to, I want to go to the gold and silver to start with. Let me look at those two real quick. I didn't see these today. So a little doji inside day, doesn't tell me anything, just tells me it's still weak. Silver trying to get to the bottom. Let's see if it got it. 1984, lighter volume. Silver's going to try to bounce tomorrow. And if it doesn't, then it's going to be deeper into that bar, and you're going to get much more of a sell-off. So tomorrow's a critical day on silver here. TLT, bonds. Bonds trying to go back up to the highs. Got a swing point high sitting at 113.82. It's going to try to test it still, it looks like, huh? 137.47, gets over it. Well, you got a test failure today already. So I don't know if it's going to do it. A test failure here today. So a 2-bar reversal. That's after a decent extended move, although you've gyrated sideways now, so maybe it's just an over-under because of that. But it's lighter volume, definitely, so that looks like it probably will try to come back in tomorrow. And, oh, the dollar. Dollar spikes up, closes at the highs. Strong as can be. And I saw oil was up today. Let me see what it looks like. So you got the doji reversal and, you know, the little hammer reversal, and yeah, this one can bounce. This one can bounce a decent amount. I know I've got some members that are watching UNG still. UNG doesn't look very good still. Let me see what UNL looks like. Yeah, if they came back to test that low, that was what we were talking about. 1835, 1833, less volume. This looks like the spot, folks. Let's look at the weekly. Yeah, it's there. So if you're going to take this trade, you give it no room, right? You take the ATR, you give it a little bit of room under the ATR, you put a stop right there, and you give it nothing. And you know, that's the more risky play. The safer play is you give it a chance to start lifting, and then you jump on board and put your stops back up underneath this bar. Either way. So UNL looks ready. Let me see, what kind of questions we got here? Oh, so we had multiple earnings tonight. I don't have them in front of me, but it looks like here's a question on one of those, which is eBay. eBay reported earnings. Looked like the earnings were okay from what I could see. Let me see how these traded after hours. So let me pop to another screen here. eBay. Go to my big cap tech stock board. And it looks like eBay traded up about 1% after hours. So it's traded up to about 51.44, which is really nothing. Okay, so the question is any thoughts on whether eBay earnings will influence you to hold or sell Facebook into its earnings? No, I think eBay's a special case right now, and that is if you remember, well, there was two things going on. Let's pull this back to weekly, and then we can talk about it. So no, I think the answer to the question is no. The two things that were going on is eBay had tried to break higher, had gotten to break higher, and couldn't hold it, right? And that threw it back into a big range, and then it just sold off. And it's almost like the market always knows what's going to happen or what has happened. Because if you remember, eBay had a breach in security, and it was known for a while internally, right? And I'm sure that got leaked out because look at how it traded. And I don't know exactly what the date was. It'd be kind of interesting. But every time I do this kind of analysis, nobody look at it, you know, it's just like somebody knew right here or something, right? And then this happens. And so you pinpoint the fact that the news comes out here maybe, and then they say, oh, it was known ahead of time, and then you have to just kind of guess where that was. But that was really the influence here. So eBay itself as a stock looks like it's going to test lower still. I wouldn't be messing with this one. As far as Facebook, would it influence me? No, because I think this is a special case in that you had business hurt there as a result of what had happened. Facebook itself, when does Facebook report? Do you have that? I don't have it handy. I probably do have it handy over in our stock list. Let me go look. Facebook reports on, I don't have it handy. Okay, I guess I can't tell you, but I think it's next week. 23rd, thanks. 23rd is next Wednesday, so a week away. So we have the two things we have happening. This is the weekly on Facebook. So you can see it's come right back up to this breakdown bar, and it's struggling there, 67.36. So if we go back to the daily on it, 67.36, you can see it's right there and it's struggling. Okay, and it's hanging right there. And that's with the bad news. That's with yelling at it yesterday, saying social media, biotech, and small caps are probably overvalued. At least their staff said that. But it's still hanging there. And I believe you're going to see good numbers come out of these guys. So the question of whether you hold it or not, well, it really depends if you can break over this high or not. If it were to stretch higher into earnings, you'd want to take some off. You know, if it breaks out and starts to run, you'd want to take some off into that run. If not, then you got to guess, right? Because you got a little ABCD structure here, it looks like. Let me make sure that's a ABCD. 68.17, yeah, it is. So you got the potential for an ABCD structure, and that measurement 62. Oh, it's about $6 on top, right? That'd take you up to 72. Yeah, so I would, you know, I'm inclined to just stick with this guy. I would honestly like to see it just break out and run, and let me take some off into the run. But it looks to me like it's probably going to hang here for another 5 days. So then it will just be a question of what the rest of the market's doing. If the rest of the market's going to struggle and it looks like it's going to turn, you probably want to take some profits. If it doesn't, then you just, you know, then it comes to, do you really believe they're going to report better earnings or not? I suspect they are. And so I'm kind of inclined, definitely will hold some. It's just a question of how much. Okay, I'm out of time. Yeah, funny how that works. Hey folks, I appreciate you being there, appreciate you joining me. You tell a friend, tell two, help us grow and help you. I'm LA, this is, and it was your daily TA wrap. I'll be back here tomorrow, we'll see how we fare. Looks like these markets are going to keep bouncing around. Try to bounce a little bit higher maybe, but it looks like a struggle to me. Have a great one. Good night, folks.